But let's also turn to Ukraine, because the aid that the United States has been providing for the last almost 2 years now is into question. Republicans so far are saying if foreign aid is part of a national security bill, the bill also must include money for the southern border. Yesterday, Senate Democrats unveiled a $111 billion national security package, which includes foreign aid and measures targeting the border. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said he would give Republicans a vote on a Republican-written border policy amendment if they vote today in favor of opening debate on the foreign aid package, so do it separately. The offer was rejected by his counterpart in the Senate, Republican Mitch McConnell. Yesterday, Schumer warned his Republican colleagues what is expected of them and what the Republican Party of old would think about it.
If Republicans want to bring up immigration right now, right in the middle of trying to pass aid to Ukraine and other issues, the onus is on them to present serious bipartisan proposals that can get broad support from Democrats. Ronald Reagan would be rolling in his grave, if he saw his own party let Vladimir Putin roll through Europe. So once again, I urge my Republican colleagues to think carefully about what's at stake with this week's vote. What we do now will reverberate across the world for years and decades to come.
So, Jackie, take us inside the dynamics in the Senate. The House is one thing, obviously, but the Senate, this briefing yesterday, the bipartisan briefing, where the Department of Defense, Department of State tried to prevail upon Republicans to get the Ukraine funding passed. They say if we don't fund them, they're going to lose the war, that Putin's going to roll through Ukraine. But they want attached to this legislation, border protections, border security money. Schumer, as we heard there, says we will do that, but let's do it separately. How is this going to play out?
That is the fundamental issue here, that Democrats ultimately do not want to appropriate this money with border funding. And Republicans don't trust Democrats enough. They don't trust what Senator Schumer just proposed there to do this separately, because they don't think that it will ultimately get pushed through. And this is life with such slim majorities in both the Senate and the House, where, you know, these 2 to 3 vote majorities, it makes it all but impossible to get things through this highly contentious and polarized environment, especially on these issues, immigration and foreign aid, especially when the Republican Party, the tides have clearly turned towards this more isolationist posture, and overall foreign spending in general is becoming increasingly popular. And the more and more the administration and Democratic lawmakers on the Hill try to make the case that we should be dedicating more money towards Ukraine, Israel, et cetera, you know, even foreign funding for climate projects and really, you know, spending across the board, the more Republicans are doubling down on their desire to withhold that money and then sort of redirect the attention to the lack of funding that the Biden administration is throwing their weight behind when it comes to the border, which, if you talk to any progressive Hispanic congressional caucus groups, they simply don't believe that money will make any sort of difference on the border, that there is an inherent policy problem when it comes to immigration, and that just throwing resources, more border patrol, et cetera, is not going to make any kind of difference, and is really just sort of a performative throwing some red meat at an issue to rile up the base ahead of a big election year.
So, Jonathan Lemire, that may be what progressive lobbying groups think on Capitol Hill. That is not what independent voters, that is not what swing voters in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada think. It's not even close to what they think. Immigration is a massive issue and will be a massive issue in 2024 for these groups. Maybe not the general electorate at large, but for these groups, this is going to be a significant issue. You go through any polling, you look through polls with independent voters in New Hampshire and independent voters in all of these places. The border actually is, because there's chaos there. And we have said Barack Obama and Joe Biden's administration, when they left, had the lowest number of illegal border crossings from Mexico in 50 years. Things have gotten worse through the last two administrations. So I guess I don't understand. Tell me what the thinking is of Democrats. I don't understand why Democrats don't trade Ukraine funding for strong border security. We've said it here before. If I were Democrats, I would say, okay, Republicans, I see your border security bill and I raise you some. They have to go into this election showing independent swing voters, disaffected Republicans. Let me say the states again. In Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, let me add New Hampshire to that. Voters who want to see this White House and this Democratic Party doing something significant on border security.
Yeah, and those in the White House will say privately they recognize that border security and immigration writ large is a real political weakness for this president heading into his election year. I think there is a willingness to deal, but it's a question of how much and what they want to be seen as doing. But now the Republicans some Republican senators still want to make this happen, but they seem to be at a real impasse right now. And Jackie, people I talked to on the Hill last day or so, they feel like the votes just aren't there, that they're just really not sure how this package is going to get done, that we're going to barrel into the winter holidays, that recess, unable to provide aid to Israel or Ukraine, to come up with border security, none of it. And I'm curious as to, A, what you think in terms of your own whip count, if you will, but also to talk to us about the role Mitch McConnell is playing in this, who for so long was a champion, a real champion among Republicans for Ukraine aid, but now seems to be somewhat diminished in his ability to get a deal done.
McConnell has totally seen the writing on the wall and actually advised his members to vote against the package because he thinks that they need to take a stand and sort of take this show vote to show that they're not going to budge on border security. But the conversations that my colleagues and I have been having all week, and actually really since last week, is that we need to reckon with the fact that Ukraine funding is probably not going to get done. Even Israel funding, which every single person in the U.S. Congress is mostly behind. There are some discrepancies on, how many conditions or assurances some people want. Bernie Sanders came out with that letter yesterday that called for the U.S. to take, for Biden to at least enforce currently existing U.S. laws when it comes to appropriating that aid to Israel and the way that they're spending that, making sure that they're not bombing civilians with U.S. bombs as they continue their attack on Gaza. But I doubt, and you heard GOP members say this last week, that any of this is going to get done, if anything does get done, before Christmas. You had Max Miller, one of the only Jewish members in the House GOP conference, say last week that he was infuriated by this, that even in the case that something did ultimately come to the House floor in this very little time left before the Christmas holiday and Christmas recess, that Speaker Johnson has still said that there needs to be offsets when it comes to Israel funding. That's not going to go through in the Senate. So it is, McConnell and Johnson are at odds with each other, and it's reflective of the entire system and the way things are working in Congress right now.
What an absolute shock that the new speaker is once again a raging hypocrite. Once again, on just about everything. He said, I can't believe, again, read the Bible. What? Hypocrisy, lying? It is constant. Offsets? Did he talk about offsets with Donald Trump when Johnson,
about January 6th.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. He lies about it through his teeth. I don't know. I haven't read that in the Gospels. I haven't read it, that you can lie if you want to gain power. You can lie. It's like Liz Cheney talking about her conversations with Mike Johnson going, this is wrong. Your constitutional law. He goes, yeah, I know it's wrong. I know there's no basis for what I'm doing. Basically, I know I'm lying, but I want to get close to Donald Trump. Like the pursuit of power, he's actually become, he's just like a televangelist. He really is. It's Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, 2023. And he's lying to Republicans. He's lying to evangelicals. He's lying through his teeth. And now, even on something as small as offsets, we have to have offsets. We have to talk about, despite the fact that Donald Trump and I raised the deficit and raised the national debt more in 4 years than any president did for the first 220 years in American history. Now he wants offsets. It's so hypocritical, Sam.